What is up, lads? You're with Budgetmonk, and welcome to another episode of Brandenburg Boot Camp, where here we're going to be talking about aggressive expansion. So let's quickly go over the current state of affairs. This year is 1630, and with the exception of these 5 German cities, we dominate the absolute vast majority of northern and southern Germany, as well as Central Europe, and arguably the world. Being the number one great power, we're currently allied to the second greatest power, Spain, with a subject of the Netherlands and Finland. I wanted to show you guys here, we have an exceptional ruler with our admin focus, rank 3 admin advisor, and being over 50 power projection, we're currently gaining 14 admin per month, which is whopping. But I wanted to demonstrate that we're actually limited currently by our states or admin as opposed to aggressive expansion, which is pretty impressive if you think about it. I have 30 out of our 36 states available, and certainly some nice territory to state up. But that's a kind of testament to how well we're actually doing and not being limited by aggressive expansion. So with the imperialism CB soon on the horizon and the age of absolutism begun, we are poised and ready, in my opinion, to actually dominate the entire world if we deemed it necessary. If you think this is impressive, make sure to stay tuned to the next episode, Diplomacy, where we're going to be expanding our holdings dramatically. So many people might wonder, how exactly did we do this here, being in one of the harshest environments in regards to aggressive expansion, and that's what this episode is about. But we're going to begin with the basics, and in order to do that, we're going to roll right back to the beginning and address some of those issues. Alrighty lads, we're going to be jumping back to the year 1466, which is about when I fully annexed the Teutonic Order and actually ended the first session starting off well. We're going to be talking about some of the basics behind aggressive expansion and coalitions. Aggressive expansion is region-based, so there are regions around here like the Baltic region, which the Teutonic Order and the Livonian Order are inside. By fully annexing the Teutonic Order, we're going to be taking almost 70 aggressive expansion. However, it's only the Livonian Order and other Baltic nations like Estonia that will be getting the full brunt of that. As a neighboring region like Poland, that will be reduced, and it will be reduced respectively the further you go away from that region where you are annexing the land. So in the case of northern Germany and Mecklenburg, 70 is still a lot, and they will be having plus 50 aggressive expansion as well. Any nation that has plus 50 aggressive expansion or more, if they fall into negative relations with you, they will change their attitude to outraged and actually start or join a coalition. Now, with that in mind, your rivals, like in my case, Bohemia, are inevitably going to be in that kind of situation. However, the Livonian Order, what we're going to do is improve relations with these nations and actually keep them into positive relations even when piecing out and taking that aggressive expansion hit, which will reduce the relations so that they remain in the positive and therefore don't flip outraged and join the coalition. Alternatively, in the case of Mecklenburg, you can see that I piece out and Mecklenburg is actually in the negative and he joins the coalition. However, it is not difficult to actually improve your relations, as the modifier for the aggressive expansion hit will go away over time. And as we're all Catholics here in the beginning of the game and so on, you improve your relations so that you can become plus 50 relations with the target nation, and they will actually change their attitude from outrage to neutral or friendly again, where they will actually leave the coalition. However, you do keep in mind that you might have to open and close the game if you're desperate, because nations sometimes sort of don't update and remain inside the coalition when they shouldn't be. In fact, I've had nations be friendly with me where I can actually ally them, which is an instant way to remove them from the coalition, by the way, if you deem it necessary. As long as your defensive diplomacy, like in my case, Burgundy, Austria, and Poland, could smash a coalition that consists of maybe Bohemia and Mecklenburg, you shouldn't worry about a small coalition occurring, as it inevitably you've just expanded, and in the meantime, worst case scenario, you fight a defensive war if they get really aggressive, which should be done decisively, or alternatively, you just improve relations with these nations, your aggressive expansion goes down, and the coalition will slowly subside. So these are the basics here, and this is how we're going to be managing these state of affairs. Do keep in mind that you can form a kingdom government rank fairly early and get an additional diplomat, but this is basically how we're going to be struggling forth in the beginning of the game, taking small land grabs until something very significant occurs. And that significant thing is the Protestant Reformation. I'm going to be representing Protestant nations by filling them in with blue here, and as they turn blue, you should be seeing red. Your second idea group should be religious, and as soon as a nation flips to Protestantism, you should be using the Deus Vult CB against them. The Deus Vult CB reduces your aggressive expansion by 25%, but the nations are actually heretics among Catholics, which dramatically reduces the aggressive expansion of annexing them. And these two combined are going to allow you to make absolute leaps and bounds throughout this religious era, as long as you focus on the Protestants, which typically ravage the German region. To give you guys an idea, this is the state of our nation by the year 1500, and look how much we achieve over the next 50 years. And of course, all we are doing is Deus Vulting the Protestant nations, as well as managing the basics of aggressive expansion like I previously mentioned. The policy between diplomatic and religious ideas is going to give you 20% increased religious unity, which is really valuable when taking this strategy into consideration, because you're going to be remaining Catholic while annexing more and more Protestant land. I want to show you guys some real-time footage here in the year 1550 to give you an idea of how things should actually look. Of course, this is a very powerful strategy in my opinion, but nothing comes for free, and one of the issues here that we're encountering is going to be our internal instability. As you're going to be remaining a Catholic, which by the way is also postponing the formation of Prussia, you're going to have rebel factions in all these lands that you're taking, because potentially your war exhaustion is fairly high, but of course your overextension, as you're not that limited by your aggressive expansion, you should be expanding and overextension and taking heretical lands. This is going to result in massive amounts of rebels. However, most of these rebel factions, like for example Bohemians, are going to have the Bohemian tech and ideas as opposed to the Prussian ideas, and having such high army tradition from constantly going to war, you're going to be able to have very strong generals and just slap these rebels around. However, you should be desperately drilling your armies at any time you possibly can to actually build professionalism, which you can use to slacken standards to gain manpower, which is another issue. I definitely like to hire some mercenaries, especially earlier on in the game, because hiring mercenaries reduces your professionalism, but I like to mix them in there and respect them. I don't delete them and then hire more mercenaries, I just keep them around so that it's the best way to be efficient with your army professionalism. But with that being said, remember that your Prussian government type gives you +3 to your rulers and your heirs, always. So you're going to have no problems with professionalism and getting it all the way back up to 100 by the end of the game. If you're not completing a military idea group, you're going to be swimming in military ideas, and you can get +1 professionalism for every general that you hire, and you can easily spam that up, I assure you. But it's all about bridging this mid-game conflict here in the religious wars, where you both take it to your advantage, massively expanding, but there are also downsides to overcome as well. So this should sort of be considered phase 2, if you will, of our project of expanding. And needless to say that we're taking war reparations and transferring trade power from everybody that we're separately peace, so we're very much a war-fueled economy. So you can see just how effective this strategy is, as by 1576, the year that we formed Prussia, this is what the state of the nation looked like. Now, having run out of things to Deus Vult, as we've basically enveloped Protestantism, you flip Protestant, form Prussia, and then you can use that Deus Vult CB against other Catholics. And this would be considered the final phase, if you will, which is kind of the poop hits the fan phase. At this stage, you're going to be Deus Vulting everybody who remains who is Catholic, and you should expect your aggressive expansion to become so much that in fact your own allies like Austria will actually fall into negative relations, despite maxing relations with them with the royal marriage and giving them military access, everything else. They will fall below 0 because you have been just that aggressive and actually break your alliance, and then inevitably, once the truce comes up, become part of your enemy coalition as well. So the final phase, if you will, is essentially what I call the whack-a-mole phase, where you want to be whacking a nation as soon as your truce comes up. You will find yourself dealing with coalitions as it's inevitable, but by simply using the Deus Vult CB, just taking on a coalition of a certain particular size before a truce comes up and another nation joins the coalition. If that nation's truce does come up, then you attack them as well, and you're simply just using the might of Prussia to just crush nations. So some of the advice that I could give is that if a nation doesn't exist and you annex them into your land, they can't coalition you, right? You're just trying to expand, eliminate everybody, and take small, if you will, If you're running out of admin points, small land grabs from nations like Austria or Hungary or even France, you should have no trouble at this rate smashing France as well as everybody else. So here we are, guys, in the year 1630, and I just wanted to show you that even now still we're basically allied to Spain, but this is what it typically looks like. We have a negative 135 aggressive expansion impact, but yet with our relations maxed and everything else, he is almost in the negative relations. That is a very typical state of affairs, and you'll find that inevitably, if you keep going, they will drop below zero and then become an enemy. But at this stage, we're actually just buffering nations out by our truce timers. The same thing has gone on for another 50 years or so, where we're expanding, and of course eagerly chomping at the bit, waiting for those truce timers to come up, because we're unstoppable now. Any and everybody is just food to us. It seems really easy, to be honest, and yeah, I feel like I can take on the entirety of Europe, certainly all of this at the same time, but the key is to fight them individually and just keep using our current 14 admin to expand very aggressively. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, guys, but do not underestimate the significance of diplomacy. In fact, diplomacy and aggressive expansion go hand in hand, and the next episode is going to be based around diplomacy. If you guys want to push this even further and gain a good understanding, I hope that you watch that as well. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope this benefited you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time in another episode of Brandenburg Bootcamp.